It's funny because obviously I'm a dragon on Dragon's Den, which is basically a show like Shark Tank where we see 100 pitches a year from entrepreneurs. And what I observe in some of those pitches, especially when they're a little bit early on and they haven't got product market fit quite yet, there hasn't been evidence that the market actually cares, is a huge amount of delusion. To the point that you could give someone some feedback, but because they've spent 1-2 years of their life and maybe mortgaged their house and invested it into this business, they're now in the sunk cost fallacy, which is that sort of cognitive bias where you've invested so much in something that you're basically defending your bad decision at all costs and you can't see the light of day. And that, in my first business was the death of my first business. But for many entrepreneurs that I meet, it's quite clearly the death of them, because if they don't have that humility, if they've got romantic, they can't take any feedback, which is a conflict with what they want to believe.
Steve, you're absolutely right. It is the single biggest reason that either they don't start because they've built this thing up in their head and it's so big and complex that to get started is almost impossible, or they are so far along they can't stop. It's tragic in a lot of ways. Which is why you have to start from the belief that your idea is a bad one, because that makes it easier to walk away from it as soon as you realize you were right.
One species of entrepreneur that I know, they care entirely about being right, which is their initial hypothesis being correct. And that's typically the young entrepreneur. And then the more seasoned entrepreneur cares entirely about being successful, regardless of whether it's via their initial hypothesis or not. They care entirely about saving time and being successful, not being right.
Jumping back to our conversation earlier about what attracted Reed and I to each other was that both of us were in that camp that said, we don't care whose idea it was. And you don't even remember who was right and who was wrong. It's a big piece.